Hello, and welcome to today's lecture on second species, counterpoint. Here's a little review of Canis firmus and first species. So, what is counterpoint, and why does it matter? Counterpoint would be writing for multiple independent parts or voices that are coordinated harmonically with one another. It's important that you're giving equal weighting of horizontal, melodic, and vertical harmonic considerations. What is the species approach to counterpoint? A species approach is a teaching strategy for counterpoint dating back to the Renaissance, which progresses from simple to complex in a number of steps, and those steps are just called species. So what is cantus firmus? Cantus firmus literally means held chant, firm chant, or pre-established melody. And the cantus firmus, CF, is the melody that exists first, against which the contrapuntal line is being constructed. Cantus firmi are structured according to the following general principles. There's about 8 to 16 notes that are all the same duration. They're all whole notes. You begin on the tonic. You end with a stepwise descent to the tonic. So if you're in major, it goes re-do, mi, re-do. If you are in minor, it goes ti-la. Wait. Yes, ti-la. That's right. Okay. And then the melodic line has inherent musical structure. It's usually arch-shaped. It's predominantly stepwise, but it has some leaps that are countered by a step in the opposite direction. And you practice an avoidance of dissonant horizontal intervals. Yeah, in the melodic line. No augmented fourths melodically, no diminished fifths, no augmented seconds, and avoiding all sevenths. So, and then finally, what is first species? This is the second half of last week's video. First species is note against note counterpoint, so one against one, setting one note in the counterpoint for every one note of the melody. One note of the cantus firmus, that is. All the vertical intervals must be consonant, unison, third, fifth, sixth, and then the compounds of these, so compound unison is just an octave. Compound third is a 10th, compound fifth is a 12th. Compound sixth is a 13th, and then if you had a double octave, that would be a 15th. So you can use all those intervals, but you do have to pay attention to avoid the diminished fifth. And I gave you the guidance that you should probably try to span around a 10th at a maximum between the voices, and you can go up to a 12th, and we'll expand that a little bit today. And then the horizontal structure of the counterpoint line should follow the same basic principles as you followed with the cantus firmus, except for at the very beginning and the very end. So for the beginning, and this is your counterpoint line, you're going to begin on the tonic or the fifth. That is, if your contrapuntal line is above. Otherwise, if your counterpoint line is below, that means the cantus firmus is above, then you do have to be again on tonic. And then how are you going to end it? You're going to end with a stepwise ascent from the leading tone to the tonic, which in major would be ti-do, and in minor would be si-la. And then if scale degree 6 is right before scale degree 7 in minor, then you have to raise fa to fi, if it's going to directly precede si. Now, if any of this is confusing, just go back and watch last week's video. And last week's video was in 2 parts. I know it was a long one, but just go back and watch it again. And you've been doing some practice on it. So hopefully this makes sense, but I believe you haven't had any practice on minor yet. So if any of this stuff is confusing, go back and check out last week's video again. These things are made to be classics, so you can watch them over and over again. Maybe even cult classics. Finally, for minor keys, you're going to use natural minor throughout the exercise, except in the final 2 or 3 bars, raising the leading tone in the penultimate bar, and then raising scale degree 6 just before it in the semi-penultimate bar, if it's present there. So let's look at a little comparison of first species, and then we're going to see what's going on in second species. In second species, as you're going to see, there are twice as many notes in the counterpoint as there are in the cantus firmus, so it's a 2-to-1 ratio. Cantus firmus is still written in whole notes, just like we have here, but the counterpoint is now going to be written, well, you can see, sorry, both of those are cantus firmi. Counterpoint, sorry, this is first species. I'd like to thank the David Bashwinter Choir, by the way, for performing all the examples today. Here's second species. So you can see that in between first species and second species, the difference is that there's twice as many notes per measure in second species. The same principles of consonants are going to apply in both. So consonant intervals, still, in first species and in second species, are the unison, the third, the fifth, the sixth, and their compounds. So those compounds, octave, 10th, 12th, 13th, 15th. However, one form of dissonance is now also allowed, the passing tone. And we'll do a lot of, well, somewhat of focus on that today. The passing tone is only allowed on the second half of the bar. So that's the weak beat of the bar. And passing tones must be approached and left both stepwise. So approached stepwise and left stepwise. And then they have to go in the same direction. We'll see a little bit more of that on the next page. I would like to point out that the authors here did a good job of specifying the intervals between the voices, but I encourage you to put circles around the dissonances. So that fourth there is a dissonance, and that seventh there is a dissonance. So if you always put circles there, you'll know to pay special attention. We can check to see, we know we have a rule right now that anything that's a dissonance has to be a passing tone. That means it has to be on the weak beat of the bar, and both of those are on the weaker second half of the bar, so that's good. They also have to be approached stepwise, so you have here this note B going to A, going to G. So it's a stepwise line, all going the same direction, so that's good. So this is technically a passing tone. This guy is a consonant here, a third, B up to D. This one is a consonant from G up to E. And then this one is a dissonance, but it's okay because this note is passing between the B and the G. So let's look a little bit more closely at a passing tone. What is a passing tone? Here's a little picture. Passing tone headed downward and passing tone headed upward. So passing tones are always going to be dissonant, and that's that little special fancy little D in the middle there. They're always on a weak beat. You can see I've marked up here. These are bar lines. This is a bar line. Strong, weak, strong, weak. So here the dissonance is on the weak beat. The consonants is around the strong beats. And all three notes are going to continue stepwise in the same direction from the consonants before them to the consonants after them. So all going the same direction. You can see there, over here, going up. So same example we had on previous page. Let's circle the dissonances, a fourth and a seventh. And we did evaluate these in the last page, but both of those are dissonances. We can ask, are they on the weak beat? Yes. Does everything continue in the same direction? Yes. For this fourth, it's from here to here to here. So step downward, step downward. Is it dissonant? It's on a weak beat, and it continues stepwise in the same direction. So the answer is yes. And the same with the seventh. Okay, so it's just another example from later in the chapter. And now we get one sharp in the key signature. Remember how to read this clef, right? That guy's middle C. So that's an E, C, B. And you can hear in the Bashwinter Choir recordings, in the background, I'm singing this as E, C, B. I'm singing this as Fa, Sol, La, Ti, Do, because we're sort of in G major here. So use note names for alto clef, but use solfege for bass clef and treble clef. So with this one, let's put in our intervals from C up to E, and this E is right above middle C, so that looks like it should be a 10th. I hope I read that right. I did write it right. And then that guy is a 9th. I circled it because it's a dissonance, and the authors here had just put an asterisk in, but we're being more specific than they are. And then the next interval, we have an E up to middle C, so that's a 6th. And this guy is going to be a 5th, but note it's a diminished 5th, key signature, F sharp. So F sharp up to middle C, diminished fifth. And since it's diminished fifth, that's a circle. And a third, and then we just check. We have two dissonances here, the 9 and the diminished fifth. Are they on the weak beat? Yes. Does it continue stepwise? Yes, C, D, E, and then E, F sharp, G. So both of those are stepwise continuations on the weak beat, and they continue in the same direction. They're dissonances. So yeah, those are all passing tones. The rules of second species counterpoint. So in these rules, I try to put everything on one page, makes it a little small. The aim overall is that you want to create a beautiful line in 2-to-1 counterpoint. Subsidiary aim is you want to incorporate as many passing tones as possible. You could do all of second species without using any passing tones, but you kind of want to practice using these dissonances. And then I encourage you to use at least one or even two large leaps in your exercise somewhere. And a large one would be a fifth, a sixth, an octave. And then, in all those cases, just obey the law of recovery. But that gives you a little something to aim for. So now here's the rules we have to obey. Dissonance, as we saw, can only appear on the second beat. The first beat, therefore, always has to be consonant. Unison, third, fifth, sixth, octave, etc. The second beat can be either consonant or dissonant. So the dissonance, if there's a dissonance, it has to be on the second beat. But the second beat could be either consonant or dissonant. Anytime you have a dissonance, it has to be a passing tone. So we defined that on the previous page. It's approached and left stepwise and in the same direction. So here's a couple of rules of thumb that will just help you conceptualize what a passing tone is. You're not allowed to use any neighbor tones. So a neighbor tone would be like you're on a consonant, so you go up to a dissonant. What you're trying to do is a passing tone, but then you go back down again. That doesn't work. That's a neighbor tone. We're allowed to do that eventually, but just not right now. A passing tone has to continue in the same direction. Don't ever jump into a dissonance or jump out of a dissonance. The way we've been saying it before is if you're using a passing tone, it has to go stepwise. So if there's a leap or a skip involved, then it's not stepwise. So if you find yourself jumping into or out of a dissonance, then you know that you're not doing it right. You're not getting the passing tone right. And then anytime you have the first beat of a bar can never be dissonant. So don't ever put any dissonances on the first beat of the bar. All those things will kind of help you conceptualize passing tones. Now, the second note of the bar can be a passing tone dissonance, but it could also be just a consonance. So here's a couple ideas what you could do for the second beat. If it's consonant, you could have a quote-unquote consonant passing tone or a consonant neighbor tone. By that, I just mean you move stepwise into the note on the second half of the bar. And if it's a dissonance, then you have to treat it as a passing tone. But if it's consonant, you could just keep going as if it's a passing tone. But I mean, it's not even a dissonance. Or you can come back again to the original. So that will make a little bit more sense in later pages in this presentation. Yeah, you can, move stepwise in a way that's consonant. That's always actually going to be one of those two above. Oh, so yeah, I'm doubling myself here. Okay. If have this consonant passing tone thing or even consonant neighbor tone thing, just FYI, the intervals in that measure are always going to be a fifth going to a sixth or a sixth going to a fifth against the canis firmus. And that might make a little bit more sense as we move on. At least it will make sense later in the year. Skips and leaps to other consonances. So we're, again, still talking about just the second note of the bar. You can do skips and leaps to other consonances that are things that are consonant with the canis firmus. You're going to be careful to avoid parallel perfect fifths. What that means is going from a perfect fifth to another perfect fifth directly, or a perfect octave to another perfect octave directly. We already saw, you were already practicing doing that in first species. But now you have to pay attention to two things. You have to pay attention to the strong beat at the beginning of the bar. Make sure that's not a parallel perfect interval with the strong beat of the next bar. And you also have to check the weak beat at the end of one bar to the strong beat at the beginning of the following bar. You are going to avoid immediate repetitions of a note in the counterpoint, and that's similar to what we did with first species. You're also going to avoid sequences, and we did that within first species as well. You just don't want the line to be boring, so you're not just repeating the same note. You're trying not even to repeat little motives. Okay, so for leaps, in first species, I had you not leaping more than a fifth, but now you can leap as much as an octave. Anytime you make a large leap, remember to counter it by stepwise motion in the opposite direction. That's the law of recovery. If you forget about that, if you've forgotten how that works, or you're just hazy, maybe you never knew, go back and watch last week's videos. Avoid dissonant leaps. So you're not going to leap an augmented fourth within a voice. You're not going to leap a diminished fifth, and you're not going to leap a seventh. It's okay to divide a larger leap into smaller skips or leaps. And then, so basically the idea, if you wanted to leap from G to E, you can do that. And you could even fill it in, G, C, E. So I think we see an example of this later on. And this is just a very subtle rule, but it's good to pay attention to. It's much preferred to leap within the bar from the strong beat to the weak beat than it is to leap across the bar from the weak beat to the following strong beat. So we might see that as we move on and look at some examples. Beginning and the ending. You know that we paid a lot of attention to the beginning and the ending in first species, and we're going to do the same here. So the beginning is going to be really a lot like first species. The counterpoint can be, but the rhythm is different. So the counterpoint can begin with two half notes, or it could begin with a half rest and then a half note. And that's actually the more common in this species. And then just like in first species, if the counterpoint is above, the canis firmus is below, then the counterpoint can begin on either scale degree 1 or scale degree 5. But if your canis firmus is above and your counterpoint is below, then you have to begin the counterpoint on scale degree 1, right? Basically, you have to establish the tonic on the downbeat. Okay, and then how are you going to end this? It's going to be similar to first species. If you remember, the canis firmus is always going to go 3, 2, 1. So it's going to go scale degree 2, scale degree 1 in the cantus firmus. The counterpoint, this point talks about the rhythm, but the counterpoint is going to do the same thing and wants to have the leading tone going to tonic. So the final bar in the counterpoint, the very last bar has to have a whole note, and that's going to be on the unison or the octave or the double octave with the canis firmus. The second to last bar, which is the penultimate bar, can have either two half notes or a whole note. Like I said, we'll see examples of this shortly. The final bar of the counterpoint must contain the tonic. The penultimate bar must contain the leading tone, and it might contain one other note before the leading tone, or it might just be a whole note and then the leading tone. When you are in minor, remember you want to raise the leading tone in the penultimate bar, and if scale degree 6 is immediately preceding the raised leading tone, then you're going to raise scale degree 6 as well, and that makes it like melodic minor. So except for this end, though, except for at this cadence, you're going to use natural minor throughout the whole exercise. If you're doing minor counterpoint in species counterpoint in minor, you're going to use natural minor the whole time. You're not using harmonic minor or melodic minor. Only at the cadence do you raise the leading tone. And then only if scale degree 6 comes right before the leading tone do you raise it. So finally, some additional considerations. Label every interval and circle each dissonance. So that means every time you have a second or a fourth or a diminished fifth or a seventh or a ninth or an 11th or diminished 12th or 14th, those are all dissonances. Make sure you circle them. They should be passing tones. I recommend that you aim to stay within a 12th between the voices, but if you need to, it's okay to go as far as a 15th, which is a double octave. I know it seems like 8 plus 8 should equal 16, but in music, a double octave is not a 16th, it's a 15th. So you might want to keep that in mind. And finally, you can use unisons in the middle of the exercise. You weren't allowed to in first species because it seems like one line disappears. But in this case, in second species, you can, but this unison should only appear on the weak beat. And we'll see an example of that in a bit. Sung by the Bashwinner Choir. These are just to show you the possible consonances if the canis firmus has a C. That was for if your counterpoint line is above, you could choose all those things. And then this is if your canis firmus is above and you're writing possible notes below. And I mentioned that you could use a quote-unquote consonant passing tone. By definition, we're saying passing tones are dissonances. But in this particular case, you might have some stepwise motion that's still consonant. So you can see in example 2-3 here. Above this F, you have a sixth, which is a consonant. A C, so that's a fifth, which is a consonant. And then going to a sixth. So, if you're just thinking about what are the things you could do with the second note of the bar. Here, you got a C and a C. You can jump to another note that's consonant with this C. On this F, you start on D. That's a sixth, and you're like, oh, what are the other things I could do? Well, I mean, the things you can always do are root, third, fifth, sixth. 1, 3, 5, 6. So those are your choices for consonances. So this one is almost like it's a passing tone, but it's dissonant. And we'll hear that in a second. This is another case where it looks like it's a passing tone, consonants. This is stepwise motion, but it's like a passing tone, but it just happens to be consonant. And this one, same exact thing. Consonants here. This is stepwise motion, but this is not a dissonant note. So this is just to show you can do the passing structure even if it's a consonance. Take a listen. Here's where I mentioned that you can use unisons, but they should be on the second half of the bar. So the idea there is that when you get to the moment that's unison, that E is going against that E, it's kind of like the voices. It doesn't sound like two voices anymore. It just sounds like one. But that because they're sort of staggered here on the weak part of the bar, you still hear the voices as separate. So it's quite a nice effect. So you're allowed to use them here. This is avoiding parallel fifths and parallel octaves. Gets a little trickier in second species because you have two things to pay attention to. So one, you should pay attention to the down beats of the bar. And two, you should pay attention to this weak beat to the next downbeat, the next strong beat. So in example 2-5, you have, this is just a tenth here, but on the weak beat, this B is still holding out. You have another beat. So that's an octave, and then it goes to an octave. And then you're going to see here that you have a sixth that goes to a fifth. So it's a weak beat fifth that goes to a strong beat fifth. So you really can hear those as being dissonances. And we'll give a listen. Let's just give a listen now. So the idea there is you re, ti, ti, la, la. You hear that as parallel octaves. And then here's your parallel fifths. So you get fa, sol, re. You hear those fifths. Okay, then here it is where they're on strong beats. Octave on the strong beat, and then there's another note in between, but it's not enough to make you not hear the octaves. So, and then there's going to be fifth on the beat, going to another fifth on the beat. So you want to avoid all the cases that are in here, 2-6, and all the cases that are in 2-5. You have to avoid parallel perfect fifths and parallel perfect octaves, both from the weak beat to a strong beat, and from a strong beat to the next strong beat. Okay. I mentioned, when we're trying to figure out what are all the things that you could do with the second note of the bar. Let's look at what's going on here. There's a G up here, an E, so that's a 10th. This is a 9th, so that's passing on the way to there. This G up to that E is a 6th, and then let's skip this note for a second, and then here you're going to get a C and an A, so that's a 13th, I think. C up to A, yeah. So this is a big leap from G down to C, and this E is kind of filling it in. I mean, the E still has to be a consonant in this case. E against E, it's an octave. But here you'd say it's filling in that leap. So you're taking two skips in the same direction instead of just a big leap to a fifth. And you're going to see the same thing here. I mentioned before you go from a G up to an E, and you might throw a C in between. It's got to make sense with the note that's there. It's got to be a consonant. E up to C is a 6. So that is a consonant. Let's give a listen to these things. Mi, fa, sol, mi, do, re, mi. Re, fa, sol, do, re, fa. Okay, so both of those are very acceptable. And let's remind ourselves about how we're ending this exercise, and this is specifically in minor. So remember, the very end, we want a whole note. In the second to last bar, the penultimate bar, you definitely want the leading tone, and since we're in minor, we have to raise the leading tone. And if scale degree 6 comes right before the leading tone, then that has to be raised too. This one is just subtly different. You've definitely got the tonic there. You've got the leading tone, raised leading tone there, but here it's a whole note in the second to last bar, whereas here it was just a half note. And then here scale degree 6 is right before it again, so you're raising scale degree 6, so melodic minor, but notice the rhythm is different there. You could choose either one of those options. And then for this last one, you just have the counterpoint above and the rising line below. So this is the counterpoint line, and that's actually the same as this line. And this canus firmus is the same as up there. So it's just showing you that here it's a third converging on a unison. Here it's a sixth diverging or splitting outward to an octave. Same with here, sixth going outward to an octave. Those are your cadences. So listen, give it a listen, all three of them. So now we have a sample solution worked out by the authors, and I'm going to take you through it step by step. So, and actually maybe I'll sing this for you. So that was a D, it's a B flat, so B flat, D, C, G, F, D, E flat, D, C, B flat. Remember, do that once and then do it a couple times. Ya da da dee da 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 da. So you can kind of internalize it. So at the beginning, we're going to start with either two half notes or a half rest and one note. And so that's what's going to be most common. Do this one. Just do this if you can. Half note rest and then half note. I think this is wrong. I don't think we're allowed to use a whole note at the beginning. I will have to double check, but I think that's wrong. The first interval has to be a fifth or an octave. So this is a B flat, so we could have an F up there, or we could have another B flat. So here we have an octave. We could have possibly the unison, but that's only if the canis firmus is going to go down. If the canis firmus is below, it'd be fine. A 12th, right, from this B flat, which is right around there, all the way up to that F would be a 12th. I mean, that's pretty far. And you probably are not going to want to start on the double octave. So let's put the 8 in there. And then there we have when the canis firmus goes up to a D, you have the upper voice going down to an A. So it's a fifth. And I put little boxes around those guys to show that they're perfect intervals. It's perfectly fine to go from an octave to a fifth. It's just if we had 2 fifths in a row or 2 octaves, we would want to pay special attention. So I put a little note, pencil in the generic vertical interval between the voices as you work, exclamation mark. And then specify the exact octave distance. So for tenths, don't just call them thirds, call them tenths, because I'd really like you to pay attention to where this B flat is in space, right? That's middle C. So we can map out a middle C there, this B flat right below middle C. So it's that up to that B flat. So that's exactly an octave. This D is right above middle C. So that D is right there. And from that up to that A is a perfect fifth. Okay, so I would like you to pay attention to exact octaves. Once we get into triads and figure bass, then you can simplify and you can just call tenths. You can just call them thirds. But for now, do the full interval. Okay, so now let's look at the ending. The authors have penciled in. We know we want T do, so A going to B flat, right? This is scale degree 2 going to 1 in B flat, C going to B flat. So we want that with A. C to A is a sixth, A going to B flat, T do. Or you can have La Ti Do, right? You can, in the second to last bar, you can either have a whole note or you can have 2 half notes and then a whole note. So I'm actually marking both of these, if it's the big A there, a sixth going to an octave, or you could have 2 full notes there, so then you'd have a fifth going to a sixth. So this C up to that G is a fifth, going to from that C to that A is a sixth, and then B flat, B flat. Okay, and then note that somewhere in the penultimate bar you have the leading tone. So either you have an A there or you have an A there right at the beginning of it. And then we're going to sketch in a climax, and we can change the climax later if we want, but we're going to pencil this in. Just like in first species, roughly around the middle of the exercise. This is the climax for the canis firmus. So just don't put your climax in the same exact bar as the climax for the canis firmus. And I think we get to listen now. Oh, not yet. But that's a sixth. This is an F. That F is above middle C, so that F is right there. So F up to D. B flat, do, D, C, G, F, D, E flat, D, C, do. So now what we do next is just sketch in the stuff between the beginning that we had and this climax. And so I put them in red just to show that they're brand new. Write in the generic intervals between the voices. I did do that. We're going to use circles for the dissonances. Here we have that. The fourth is circled, and boxes for the perfect intervals. So that's a fifth. So like I said before, pay attention. You have 2 boxes in a row, but that's okay. An 8 and a 5. But, oh, hey, we do have to check this fifth to this fifth. I think that actually violates a rule. But this is let's see if they fix it. For right now, that's breaking the rule because that's parallel fifths on strong beats. Conceivably, they have a subtle little rule that says if you're going down here to contrary motion, I don't know. I think that breaks the rule. Assure that any dissonances, which are the circles, this fourth here, are passing tones, right? If it's if we've circled it, it's a dissonance. If it's a dissonance, it has to be a passing tone. So that means it has to be stepwise. Let's check it out. B flat, C, D. So that is stepwise. All going the same direction, right? It wouldn't be B flat, C, B flat. That would be two different directions. So this is all going the same direction. It's stepwise, and it's a dissonance on the weak beat. So that is okay. So that's a passing tone. Yeah, good job, authors. And then we want to check for parallels between successive strong beats, and that's where we do actually have one. And then weak beat to immediately following beat. So we don't have any there. But if we could check octave. If this were an octave here, then it would be a problem. B flat, do, D, so, C, D, G, F, D, E flat, D, so, D, B flat. So now we have filled in the remaining space from the climax to the end. And then we chose an option here at the end. We still had both penciled in, but we chose to go G, A, and not just a big old A. We are going to, they marked these sequences. This is just like repeated set of notes, G, A, B flat, G, A, B flat, and they don't want you to do that. You want to, just like in first species, you want to keep variety. You want to be unpredictable, basically. Okay, we filled in the notes. They filled in the notes for us, but we're going to fill in the generic intervals. So there's a fifth there, and a sixth, and a fifth, third, fourth. Ooh, a dissonance. And that's an E flat up to an A natural, so that's an augmented fourth. Sixth, third. Okay, those are all our new notes. Notice that we got a fifth there on the weak beat and then another fifth on the weak beat. That doesn't matter. That's not parallel fifths. It's only weak beat to strong beat, and it would be strong beat to strong beat. The fact that this fourth is an augmented fourth as opposed to a normal fourth, it doesn't matter. They're both dissonances. You're allowed to have this interval. It sounds quite lovely. You just have to treat it right as a passing tone. So we checked for parallels. If we want to check for parallels, you have to look for the boxes because we already circled. We put, boxes around all the perfect intervals. If there's two 5s in a row in boxes, or two 8s in a row in boxes, or two 12s, or two 1s, or two 15s, then you're going to have to change one of those. And for all the dissonances, we want to check to make sure they're used correctly. We already checked this light blue 4, but there's this red 4. And E flat up to G is a third. This is a weak beat. It's a dissonance. And stepwise motion in the same direction, so it's fine. So all you have to do is look at the circles. Are they on the second half of the bar? Yeah. Does the line move stepwise, continuing in the same direction? Yeah. So therefore, it's passing tone. Cool. However, this line is a little bit boring and it's too predictable with the repeated 3-note pattern. We're going to pimp the line. Let's give it a listen. B flat, do, T, so, La, T, G, Re, D, E flat, do, so, La, T, do. Now all these rules sound like they're persnickety. But you really do hear the la ti do, so la ti do. It is kind of repetitive. And the other thing that's pretty nice, I think, is the da ti dum bum. You hear the climax there. I mean, it's very subtle, but like it's a big deal. And then this climax just comes one bar later. That's a very nice effect. Like these are subtle rules, but I think they're super valuable, which is why we spend as much time as we do. So we got to pimp out this line. It's not great yet. We did change some notes. Yeah. So I put these guys in gray. I can't remember what I did exactly, but I think I put in gray the ones that are changed. So we're going to have to check in here what's different. I think there's some differences in there. We have to revise those intervals. So change some notes in the counterpoint. Now we have to update the intervals between the voices. Okay, that's not a fifth anymore. So from F up to A, right? This F here is that F there, right? This is F above middle C, and then that's that F. So that's just a third from F up to A, because that note was changed. That guy's not a fourth anymore. It's a sixth from E flat up to C. That E flat is right there at the base of the treble clef. So it's a sixth. And that's not a sixth. Whoa, apparently it's a third. Okay, D, that's the D right there, up to F. Okay, D up to F. That guy's definitely not a third anymore. Looks like a fourth. Okay, so from D, which is this D here, up to G. Oof, so that's not a fifth. Oh, we got rid of one of those notes. So now this G just goes to A, and then we have C going up to A, which is a sixth. Okay, but so we fixed some things. It's got a little bit more variety, but there's still no magic. Let's give it a little listen. B flat, T, sol, la, T, do, re, do, E flat, sol, la, si, do. Now you may think there is magic, and I'm sure there's a little bit, but you know the Bashwinter Choir is really doing quite a lot of that magical stuff themselves. And there's like some fancy audio editing in there. But let's critique this upper line, this counterpoint line. It's the range of only a sixth in the whole part. So low. F is the lowest note. D is the highest note. It's only a sixth. And there's no rule that says it can't be a sixth, but that has something to do with the fact that it feels a little boring. And it's kind of hovering, you know, like if someone is hovering uncouthly around you. This line seems to be hovering around B flat, and you can see starting from like these last bars. La, da, 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 da. That's just too much B flat. Ugh, this line is still boring. We got to keep pimping. So, we changed some of the notes just in here. So we're going to put in the new intervals. A seventh. So this is F, right, at the base there. F up to E flat is a seventh. Whoa, we got a new climax. Hey, cool. Yeah, this used to be the old climax, so now we keep going. So D up to F, this D is right there. So D up to F is a tenth, and then it becomes a third there. And then here we got E flat, which is that E flat going to a third there. And that looks like it's going to be a fifth in a box. And then everything else is just as is. Do we have any new things to pay attention to? We got a new dissonance. So let's check it out from F up to D. It's a sixth. D, E flat, F. E flat is the dissonance. It's moving stepwise in one direction, and it's on the weak beat. So yeah, passing tone. It's good place. So let's check it out. Is our new ride sufficiently pimped? We see that the line is now continuing up past the original climax, and we have a new climax on F. That's why we say we just pencil in a climax. It's perfectly possible and allowed to revise that later. The line now leaps dramatically down an octave. I actually don't know where tonic is. La da 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 ba la da 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 da. So this is a big leap downward, and we follow the law of recovery. So F down to F, then go up by second. And even I mentioned in the previous video that it's nice if you can go up into this note, and then the big leap, and then go up again out of it. So this line definitely follows the law of recovery. The melodic range for the counterpoint is now as wide as an octave. So La da da. The F is the lowest note we have. F there, F there. La da 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 da. So our melodic range expanded from just a sixth to an octave. So it's a little bit wider now. And then the range between voices, how do I know that it's a tenth? We actually wrote all the intervals in, so we can see 10 is the biggest interval distance. Quality check. Is our... Laughing at my own jokes. Quality check. Is our pimped out ride a self-driving car? What do I mean by that? Does it have its own melodic... Oh, it should just be ITS, not IT''S. Anyway, does it have its own melodic logic, equal in independence and beauty to the cantus firmus? So the cantus firmus is a melody, right? We want to make sure our counterpoint line is not just notes that go with the melody, but we want to make sure that it could work on its own. So let us give it a listen and see what we think. B flat, D, sol, la, ti, do, re, fa, sol, E flat, D, la, ti, do, re. Well, I think the answer is yes. We have one last example. This one is in minor. I wanted to do one in minor so we could practice raising the leading tone. And just do one where the cantus firmus is above and the counterpoint is below. So, beginning, ending, climax. We know that we want to begin with a unison or an octave. So the line is given here. That's a B flat, so D, D, A, G, F, E, D, F, E, D, la da 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 da. Okay, so we sang it. That D is up in this staff, it's right there, right? It's right above middle C. So D, so this is an octave below. We know we want to begin either an octave below or the unison. We can't begin a fifth below because the fifth below would be a G, and that would change the tonic from D to G. So we want to make sure to support the tonic of D in the first bar. And we know that we can begin either with a half note here and a half note here, or a half rest and then a half note, and this one is preferred. So it's an octave. We know we want to end C, La. So we're in minor. We have T, La. That's a D. So D, we're in the key of D. D is La. So T, Do, Ti, La. Scale degree 3, 2, 1. And we want C, La down here. So that's a tenth from C sharp up to E, and an octave there from D up to D. And I made a little note that when you have T or C La below and T Do above, or sorry, T Re, T La above, you have a tenth converging to an octave. If we reduce this by an octave, you'd have a third converging to a unison. So that's always going to happen if the counterpoint is below. And then if the counterpoint is above, you're always going to have a sixth going out to a unison, or conceivably a 13th going out to a 15th. So the penultimate bar, we know, can have one whole note, like here, or it could have two half notes, kind of like we tried out in our last example. But in each case, the one note has to be the leading tone, or if there's two notes, some other note, and then the leading tone. And then, of course, if scale degree 6 comes right before the leading tone, in that case, this would be a B, and it would be B flat because of the key signature. So if there were a B flat in here, or if we shoved it into this bar, B flat, we would have to raise it to B natural. Right, if it comes right below before the C sharp. But otherwise, the rest of this exercise is all natural minor, so that's a B flat. That is a C natural. It's not C sharp. The climax, we can see the climax in the cantus firmus is in bar 2. The authors put the climax in our counterpoint line right there. So it just has to not be the same as that one. And it's nice if it's a little bit past halfway. And that ends up being a third. This B flat is sort of like right there, right? Because this middle line is middle C. So it's B flat is right below middle C. So this is B flat 3. This is a D 4. That's the third. And then, so we kind of sketched it out that way. Then we're going to fill in the stuff in between the beginning and the climax. And with the idea of creating as many passing tones as possible. If I remember correctly, I think there are no passing tones in this one, which doesn't really work with that rule, but that's okay. The authors do, however, avoid illegal parallel intervals. So let's check it out. 13th, 12th, 10th, 12th, 10th octave. 6th, 5th. So why did I put the 12ths in boxes? Because 12ths are compound fifths. You have, perfect intervals on the weak beats, but that's fine. There's no issues with any kinds of illegal parallels, but there are not any passing tones, interestingly enough. Like this one is a passing tone, but it is not a dissonant passing tone. Same with this one. This is a passing tone from D up to A, but like going C, D, E. So this is passing, but it's not a dissonance. Now all we have to do is complete the remaining stuff in there. There's just 3 extra notes to throw in. Check again for errors and dissonances and parallels. So we got a 5th there. We got a 6th and a 13th. And notice we got this nice octave leap from A down to A. So does it go up to the octave? Yes. And then leap down. And technically, they really should have gone up by step. But it is, the authors say secretly in the book somewhere in like a footnote that it's, if you don't go up by a second, you could go up by a third. So they're still basically following the law of recovery here. And let's just check the melodic integrity of the line. We want to make sure it doesn't just not just that it works, but that it works nicely, that it's melodic. So does it flow? Is it too static or too predictable? Sort of like it, or is it too static? Sort of like we saw in the last one, or in comparison, is it too unpredictable? Like there's a big, huge octave leap here. What if they were all octave leaps? That would be too unpredictable. What's the range from the lowest to highest note? So let's see what's our lowest note. Lowest note looks like A, and highest note looks like B flat. So that's a range just over an octave. Does it have a climax? Yeah, it's got that B flat. Does it have at least one dramatic leap? Yes. Recovered from correctly? Yeah, allowing for the fact that it would be nice if they went up to B or B flat there, but they go up to C sharp, so that's okay. It's technically okay. Let's give it a listen. Pretty cool. A final thanks to the Bash Winter Choir for performing this. Now, in conclusion, new with second species, trademarked, you have a 2-to-1 ratio of notes. The half notes in counterpoint, whole notes in the canus firmus. Dissonances are now allowed. What? Yep. Passing tones only. Restrictions apply. Leaps as large as an octave must be countered by stepwise motion in opposite direction. See policy under law of recovery. Range between voices comfortable up to a 12th. Not safety tested on ranges exceeding 2 octaves. All principles you know and love from first species and canus firmus still apply.